Yeah, the rules this time are a little different than last year in the sense that we do have, we have eliminated the quorum. So, you know, whether we have 10 people or 1,000 people, what we're going to do is we're going to take up every article. We're going to read it. We're going to discuss it. And every article can be amended. And so we'll take up the amendments one at a time. And after it's finished, after we finish discussing it, there usually is a motion, you know, to end debate. And after that, I will just announce that it's on to the warrant, which is what we've been doing for years. The only difference this time is that, you know, anybody can make an amendment. I ask that the amendments be in writing. They be given either to Bob or I, you know, in writing beforehand, so we, you know, get it right. But in terms of the way we run it, it's going to be very much the way we've done it, you know, always before. There is a section in here that says that the school board can make an amendment prior to the meeting, and that still stands. That hasn't changed. So if prior to us starting, you guys wish to make an amendment on any warrant article, you can do it. And then later, and you have a right to do it prior to our discussion of the first warrant article. So, you know, we finish and maybe Nate gives his state of the school, but then if the board wants to do something before we take up the first warrant article, if the board has an amendment it wants to make, it can bring it up. Otherwise, once we get into the articles themselves, then anybody can make an amendment. So the thing we had before about the school board making an amendment, it was more if we didn't have a quorum, so I don't really foresee that happening very much anymore. Okay?
Ron?
Excuse me, John, just to rephrase what you're saying, is the school board can make an amendment prior to the article.
Prior to us discussing any article.
Right. Now
I mean any, you know.
Yes.
Once we've discussed one article, the school board no longer has the ability under its special provision to make an amendment. But you, Ron Campo, you know, could make an amendment if, you know, you all wanted to.
Okay. The other thing that we spoke about, and one of the things that we ended up doing at the past sessions, that any amendments would have to be done prior to the article being read from the audience. That was one of the rules, that you have to have it in writing.
I wanted it in writing. It doesn't have to be before I read it, but I would like it before, because sometimes, you know, you can be discussing an article and somebody says, oh, I think we should do something or other. I want it in writing, you know, beforehand. I ask that if you know, for example, if you know that you wish to amend Article 4, I'd really like to have it before we discuss it, just from the point of view of running the meeting. But if we are in the process of discussing the article, somebody comes up and, you know, gives me an article, says they want to amend it, I'm not going to rule that out of order.
Okay, that's where I was driving at, is that the fact is, the way it'll work is, at anywhere in that discussion, and I'll use a silly thing, someone says, I want to increase the budget by $10.
Right.
You take that, you vote on it, someone says, oops, I didn't like that, I want to do it by $20.
That's the next amendment, yep.
The next
We'll
amendment.
go.
So they do not, and it was before, we never had the quorum per se, so it never got to there, but it was always that the amendments to it had to be presented by the audience in writing. It appeared to be before, but now it could be a running debate.
Yes, because we'll accept amendments. Most of the time, you know, in any of the meetings we've had, you know, we tend to get the amendments, you know, ahead of time. And you get an idea, you know, if one's for 300,000 and one's to change it to 500, you get an idea that it's, you know, going to pick some number.
Nate?
Just a clarification and then a question. when we talk about amendments, we're really only talking about the dollar amount. People cannot change the wording of the amendment. Is that correct?
That is not correct. Okay, it depends on what it is. I mean, I don't have the warrant in front of me. You know, if I had the warrant in front of me, I could answer it better. There are a number of articles that are
Can we get John a copy of
that
the warrant?
are constrained by law to just numbers.
Right.
You know, let's see. The operating budget is numbers. Collective bargaining agreement, that has a whole different, we can discuss that later. A special meeting on cost items, the professional, lunch and school programs. I'm just looking here.
Peter, you had a thought?
John, I think what Nate's trying to say is they can't change the purpose of the article.
No, they can't change the purpose, but some of them you could change. Let's take the school fund one, just for example. It's a school lunch. Shall the voters of the Londonderry School District vote to accept and receive federal grants and other such funds to support the school lunch program and federal projects? Let's suppose people said, you know, I'm all for the lunch, but I don't want other federal projects. Somebody could move to amend it and take those words out. They are not put in, as far as I know, they're not put in by a statute, so you could, you know, you could change some of the wording, but you can't change the nature of what is being done. You can't go and change the school lunch thing to, I want to do a new ball field. You know, that's not,
Right.
you couldn't do that. So you have to stick to it, and on some things, the wording is specified in a statute. You know, I'm just looking at the ones here, you know, I don't see why anyone would change any of the words, but it,
Just as
Yeah.
a second question. Let's say, and this is for the audience who are listening
Yep.
and also for us. Let's say on a particular article, you get more than one amendment to the specific article.
Yep.
How procedurally would you handle that?
What I would do is I would take them up one by one, and probably, you know, the first one I got, I'd take first, you know, and I would go through the amendments, vote it up or down, and then go on. So, for example, if the Article 9 is to put the sum of $50,000 into the year-end unreserved fund balance, okay? Let's suppose I have one that wants to make it 10,000 and one that makes it 100,000. You know, I would take one of them up and say, you know, have a discussion and vote it up or down. Now I have a second amendment, I'd take that up, vote it
Right.
up or down.
To just follow, because
Yeah.
life can get complicated. I'm just
Oh,
trying
yeah.
to
No,
lay things
it
out.
definitely can.
Let's say you take the $10,000 one.
Okay?
Then during the discussion of the 10,000, someone makes a motion to amend that to 40,000.
I would not take it at the
So
time.
you wouldn't take.
No.
So if you've got multiple requests, then it's just up or down
Down.
on that particular written
I'll
one.
just take it up or down on, you know, on that one. If there was something, for example, that, you know, the school lunch program, somebody said, you know, increase it by 10,000, and, you know, Peter says, well, the statute says it should be, you know, 10,156. You know, if it's within what we're dealing with, you know, I would probably allow that, you know, if it's a clarification of something. But, you know, I wouldn't, you know, if we have 10,000, we'll vote it up and down. You know, we now want to go to 40,000, we'll vote it up and down.
Peter?
John, you weren't at the special meeting, and the special meeting was our first test without
Yep.
the quorum that we've had for some time. And Bob did a nice job. The area that we got confused, and I think a lot of people got upset with, if you remember the old town meeting days,
Yep,
we would discuss, move the question.
Yep.
Then vote on it.
right. No vote this time.
Right, and I think a lot of people at that got cut off when somebody made the motion to move it. They thought it was something else, and then it was done, it was going to the ballot, and everybody was kind of lined up to make amendments up or down. So I think that
Well,
piece needs to be a little bit clearer, because some of them in the old days were thinking it's the old way,
Yeah.
and they forgot or didn't know that once it's moved to the ballot, as you
That's it.
say,
It's done.
discussion's cut off. Right.
And just to be fair, because John wasn't there, I'll just comment. The issue was there was nobody else standing in line
Right.
at the time the motion was moved.
Right,
And
I'm
that's why,
saying,
yeah, that's why it was moved. So I think the cautionary tale for folks is to say, if you want to speak to this, don't wait to get into line. Get into line, because if the motion is moved, we'll continue to hear the rest of the people that are in the line if they have something new to add. But if they're sitting in their chair and the motion's moved, they're not allowed to get up and speak to it.
See, that kind of leads into the second thing that people tend to get upset about, is the whole idea of motions to end debate or end discussion and call a question. People frequently use that as a tool to try to get the last word on something, and it leaves a bitter taste with a lot of other folks.
Yeah, the question of cutting off debate is always it's a tricky one, always has been and always will be. The general thing is, if you're in line, I'm not going to go and allow a motion to, cut off the debate. But I may say, Mr. Robinson, if you want to move, you're in line, and you want to move the question, I'm going to say, if anybody gets behind you and the questions move, well, that's too bad. I try to allow, a fair amount of discussion, and, when people, and you can sense it sitting up there when people generally, have enough. But I want to try to let everybody, speak. But then when there's a certain point at which we will accept a motion and, and cut it off. But I think one of the points that you're bringing is that, the school has not had for 10, 11, 12 years, it's not had any real discussions or votes or other things. And so I think the cautionary tale is that, Bob and I should just be more explicit and make sure that everybody who's in there, understands. Because the people who come to the school district meeting are not necessarily the ones that go to the, the town meeting. So I just have to, I think Bob and I will go out of our way to make sure people understand, this is what's going to happen. We're at this stage, and, if somebody moves the question, that's going to be the end of it. So if you want to get up and speak. And
Did you have Steve?
This is a little bit like Jeopardy, and not the definition of the word, but the game show. The proper motion is to move the question to the ballot. Is
that's
that
not
correct?
a question. Actually, it moves to the ballot. It's not voted because it automatically goes. We have no choice. So,
Okay, but if someone says that they make a motion to move the question, what you're saying is the belief that people have is that means we're now going to move the question to a vote.
But if you make a
That was the confusion that I saw in that meeting.
Yeah, and
In reality, I know when we've done it in the past, because we were the only ones making the motions, we made a motion to move the question to the ballot.
If you,
Am I
in the
wrong?
context of an amendment, if you make a motion to move the question, doesn't that mean calling the amendment to a vote?
yeah, that's it. If you move the question. But I think what, what we're going to do is, going to recognize one of you to, move that we take up the article. And so it's taking up the article, and when the discussion's finished, it automatically goes. Because you can't, if people voted, no, I don't want to move it to the ballot, they can't do that. That's not a proper motion. So what we'll do is that, we recognize you, for the article move, we take up Article 6 now, okay? And you read Article 6, and we take up Article 6, but at the end of the discussion, I'm going to say, and particularly if we've already moved the question, so to speak, if we've moved the question, I'm going to say, now the article will, appear on the ballot on election day.
So the question that I have then is, let's say someone presents an article, or an amendment to the article.
Yep.
How does that work as far as voting on that amendment to get it to go to the vote?
That gets a vote. So, for example, we change Article 9 for 50,000 to 70. We discuss the amendment. People think 70 is a wonderful number, okay? Or they don't think it. So then I say, okay, we're now going to vote on the amendment. As many as are for the amendment, raise the cards. Those opposed, raise the cards. The ayes have it. It is now, Article 6, or Article 9 is now changed to $70,000.
But
Okay?
if it goes to a no vote, then it's still the 50, and
Then it's still the 50.
then you move it.
Then you move it.
Well, could it,
Correct.
if 50 fails, couldn't I get up and say, okay, how about 69?
You could,
I mean,
yes.
this-
Yeah, you
this
could.
looks
I
like
would
there
probably
could
say
be
it
an-
should be a meaningful one, but yes, you
This-
could
This
do it.
looks like this could be almost infinite series.
I wouldn't allow it. I'd say, from 60, from 69 to 70, I'd say, let's get something meaningful. I would try to reason so we don't go down from, 69,901, we don't get into that sort of a
Okay, so,
thing. Because what would happen if you do that, I'd recognize a motion, to move the previous question.
That sounds pretty subjective. At what point does somebody scamper off to court and say that you didn't allow them to
That
make
is,
a
that is the
motion?
fine role of a moderator. I mean, and generally, you have to use common sense when it goes on. If you've rarely been put in the place where, where it's something like that. And the way around that is to just say, I'll accept the motion to move the previous question.
John, can I ask a question on that?
Which you just said was not an acceptable motion.
There are different ways to do it. Moderators' ways of doing things. But, in other words, if somebody really says, 70 is just too high, 65 would be more like it, and you get a sense whether that's it. The other thing that happens is that while people can do a lot of things to mess up a meeting, they tend not to.
Jo-
Yeah.
John, generally, in the town meetings, we had the idea of challenging the moderator's decision.
Always can do that.
Okay, what about on moving the question? How does that work, or can you? Let's say there's a feeling in the audience that they don't want to move eventually it has to be moved to the ballot.
Right.
But they feel there wasn't enough discussion. Is that
That can-
challengeable?
well,
I guess
what-
is the question I'm asking.
Well, the two issues. You move the question, all right?
Yes.
And you can tell from the groans in the room that people really don't want moving the question at the moment, okay? I mean, the simple way is for people to vote down to move the question. But anything the moderator does can be challenged if done before the moderator moves on to the next item. So if I accept a motion to move the question and it's seconded, and I am going to the vote, I'm too far along the way. But basically, anything the moderator does can be challenged.
Go ahead.
John, just so everybody.
Time out,
has-
I'm confused.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm confused now.
Wait a second.
I apologize. Can I do
No,
Go ahead.
He makes a motion to move the question. I second it. Do we take a vote to move the question?
If I've started if somebody else, if Nate, is getting up, to challenge something, I go and recognize Nate. But if I'm in the middle of the question, it's, how many say yes, then we're too late.
But at that point, I didn't think we were taking a vote on moving the question.
Moving the question, you take votes on.
Yes.
Moving the question is
Moving
something.
to a question to the warrants,
To the ballot.
No.
to the ballot.
No. Let's
No,
separate two things.
Calling an amendment,
I'm not going on amendment. Strictly question comes up, there's no amendments on the floor.
Move, you move the previous question is is cutting off debate.
Right.
And so that is a cutting off debate question. So
Yeah.
if you,
So Ron's question is the motion of the board to move the question to the ballot.
Right, or whoever makes the motion comes from the audience, I'm in the line in the audience to say, I move the question to the
okay,
ballot.
but that's not moving it to the ballot. Because that's not a motion, okay? A motion to move it to the ballot is never voted on at this meeting, okay? Something to move the previous question is something that says, I want to cut off debate.
Right.
Same practical effect as moving it, but it's, you move to cut off debate. All right, that's what the motion is. If somebody gets up, I move it to the ballot, I'd say that's not a proper motion, because there's no motion to move it to it,
Okay, just,
Do me a favor, please.
okay?
Okay, take it, we've had a long discussion, someone makes a motion.
Okay,
What is that motion?
okay. I'd like to move the previous question. That is to cut off debate. Is there a second? There is a second, okay. It is not debatable. We vote on it. If we voted to move the previous question, if that's a yes, we're moving the previous question, then there is no more debate on the article, or if it was an amendment, there's no more discussion on that particular amendment. And then I will say, in Article, 9 shall be on the ballot on, what is it, March?
If I could just, if I could just add something.
Wait a minute.
Peter,
Steve?
Would you be able to make that clarification when you call for that vote? In other
Yes.
words,
Yes.
indicate clearly to people that what you're going to vote on now is the last vote you will get on this particular item. And if you disagree with that, then you should be voting against it. If you agree with it, you should be voting for it. I just don't want to see people, whether I agree with them or not, I don't want to see people confused by the system. I want them to have all the help they need to be able to do what they want to have done.
I agree with that completely, and that's something that Bob and I will just make sure, particularly in this being, a meeting going on a new way where the people aren't used to it, we'll try to go out of our way to explain exactly what you're doing or you're not doing, and what the effect of what you're doing is or isn't.
Peter?
So John, as I understand, there's two ways the article goes to the ballot. One would be during a discussion, somebody gets up, moves the previous article, second,
Moves to previous question, yep.
second, and then we vote yes.
Okay.
Or-
That stops debate on that
Yes.
article.
And then we vote on it. If it's an affirmative,
Yep.
the amendment article, if it's amended, goes to the ballot.
Correct.
Or you ask, is there any more discussion on Article 9 or whatever?
Yep. And
If
there
you see none, you could then say,
Okay.
Article 9
9
as
is-
amended or whatever goes to the ballot.
Exactly, and that's.
That cuts
what'll
it off,
happen.
so to
Now,
speak.
from the point of view of the people in the audience, that they should understand, one of the reasons that you move the previous question is so that if, for example, we take up, we take up the budget, first thing, okay? And, we get approval of the school budget, or say the school board budget is approved. If you haven't moved the previous question, and somebody wants to, and the other thing you should do is vote to restrict reconsideration. In fact, I'll put that in, just so that you cannot bring it up again. And in fact, what I probably should do is, walk through and say, look, this is how we're going to do it, okay? I'm going to take up an article. I'm going to read an article, okay? We're going to read it. Then we're going to discuss it. If you have an amendment, okay, I'd like to have it beforehand. I will take up the amendment. Right after we read the article, we'll discuss the amendment, we'll vote it up or down. After the amendment is voted up or down, We will then go and discuss the article as a whole. If people think that there's been enough debate and they want to move the previous question, they can say, I move the previous question. If there's a second and there's a vote, then there is no more discussion of the article, and it will appear on the ballot. However, if 2 hours later, somebody makes a motion to take up Article 2 again, that is a legal motion, and it could be brought up, and you could have a different vote. So what you should do is you should restrict reconsideration. So after I've said an article something moves to the ballot, somebody moves to restrict reconsideration, so it cannot be brought up again.
Okay. In the past,
Yep.
let's just do the general fund budget.
Okay.
Generally, a board member will make the motion.
Yep.
Right? Then it's seconded. Right? Then we have, let's say, the board member or I make a presentation, depending on what
Right.
the article is. Then the second part of that was Budget Committee made a statement as to
Yep.
why they support it or don't support it. Right? Then there's general discussion.
Right.
So if I understand, and I'm trying to listen to this
Yep.
as a voter, so I'm
Yep,
just
good.
asking that kind of
Yep.
question. Let's say there's no amendment, there's a discussion.
Right.
Right? So if no one makes a motion from the audience.
Of any
discussion-
sort.
Of any sort, then the moderator says, ending
This is going,
discussion.
I'm
this-
going to say, seeing no more people who wish to speak, Article 2 will,
Okay.
appear on the ballot.
If someone from the audience says, I move the question, does that go to a vote?
Yes.
Okay.
If they move the previous question.
That's
The
what I
previous question is to cut off debate.
Right.
That goes to a vote.
So you move, so if the board says, move the previous question.
Yep.
Okay, or you
If
see
somebody
there's
does, yeah.
no other discussion, you go, we're moving the previous question. That doesn't require a vote.
Moving the previous question is cutting off debate. That always requires a vote. Moving the previous
He
question.
says, there's nobody else we're done.
Right.
Then we're okay.
That's what I'm
Then we're
saying.
okay. If I say it, there's nobody else speaking.
Right.
It's
That's
gonna
what I'm
go on to
trying,
the-
that's what I'm trying to get at, because I think that's part of the issue. And people would have to understand that unless a motion, if you move it, there is no vote. If it's moved, the previous question comes from the audience, there is a vote. Is that
And
correct?
That is correct, and that is to cut off the debate.
Right.
Okay? And so, for example, if it's been going for an hour, okay? And, we're going on and, every couple of minutes, somebody else gets up. There's a point at which somebody, which typically happens,
Right.
they give their spiel and then say, and I move the previous question. That is to cut off debate so that so no more people can come. And if, along the way, somebody indicates to me, they're at the end of the line, and they say, I'm going to move the previous question, I will tell people, Joe Jones is there and going to move the previous question, and I will accept that. Or if, we've just started talking, and I can tell there's a lot more I may say, I'm not going to accept it this time, we haven't had a discussion.
Again, for the audience, let's now move to an article that may have, two people have come to you with amendments.
Yep.
All right? So amendment and let's just take the general fund budget,
Yeah, okay.
okay? Someone wants to make amendment to reduce the general fund budget by $100,000.
Right.
Somebody wants to make an amendment to increase the general fund budget by $100,000.
Yep.
Would you read both amendments?
What I would do, okay, is I wouldn't read both. I would say, I have two amendments here.
Okay.
Okay, in particularly a case like that, I'd say, I've got two amendments, one's going to lower it by 100, one's going to raise it by $500,000. we're taking, this one first, we'll then go and, vote on the second one. So I would take them, but if I have amendments, I'll let people know what I have. I won't necessarily read the whole amendment, but most of the time it's, if it's dollars, it's kind of simple.
Anybody? Questions from the audience? Mary?
Do the written amendments have to have a second?
All amendments need a second, okay? But if you give me an amendment, for example, you give me an amendment to, lower the budget by 100,000. No, but I'm using you as the, colloquial, whoever it is. Somebody gives an amendment, okay? I will say I have an amendment here. Now, they either have a second when they give it to me, and a lot of people do, I move it and, Sam seconds it. Or I will say, I have an amendment, and I read the amendment, and there either is a second or there isn't.
Anything else from anybody? Steve?
If there's no other questions on that process, can you explain the paper ballot process
Okay.
for people and what that involves if they're afraid to vote in public?
Okay. Paper ballot, if before we get to a vote, okay? We're discussing it, and I have 5 people who have requested a secret ballot, and I get it in writing, okay? 5 people, If I get it in writing beforehand, we take a secret ballot, and a secret ballot is a paper ballot, and we would do it that way. If I go and, let's suppose it's, reducing the operating budget by $100,000, okay? We had no request for written ballot. We have a show of cards. I announce that, it appears the ayes have it, okay? Before I move on to Article 3, if 7 people were to go and say they wish to have a secret ballot, then we would have a secret ballot. So in other words, if I look out in the audience and say the ayes have it, and some people say, I really don't think so. If you and, 6 other people request a secret ballot, then we would take a secret ballot on that.
So it's 5.
It's 5 before in writing, or 7 before, after I've announced, but before I move on to the next article.
So,
And I got a follow-up.
Yeah, yes.
go ahead.
In writing? Do those 7
No,
have to be in writing?
the 7 do not have to be in writing, but I have to know that there's 7.
Okay.
And those 5 people or those 7 people must be in the hall.
Absolutely, because you can't make a motion unless you're in the hall, so.
So people should, it might not hurt for them to get 8 or 10.
No, or just make sure that they're going to stick around.
But they don't have to go to.
Okay, so what you're saying then is, you could have a vote, and then if 7 people ask for a secret ballot after the vote, there could be a secret ballot?
Absolutely, because that's the question. The moderator looks out at the room. The moderator looks out at the room, and there's a whole bunch of cards that come up and down. Bob or I don't, count them while they're up there. We could go and say,
That's my follow-up
yeah,
question.
we could go and do that.
If the scenario you just talked about were to occur, I would ask for a hand count.
Yeah, and we can do that.
Can you explain that process?
A hand count.
So
If somebody asks for a hand count, or if I decide this is just too close anyway, we would have a hand count, and we'd have counters that just go around, and you're asked to hold up your card, and we'd have people go and count. So the 3 ways of getting a vote. One is you put the card up, and I say, ayes or nays have it. The next one is we have, a hand vote, in which case you put up your cards and we count. And the last one is a secret ballot.
If you do, to pick up on what Steve said, if you do a hand count, And it doesn't matter what the article is, pro or con. And it's, let's just pick some numbers, 50 to 49. just for
You
sake
then
of-
still have the option of a secret ballot.
But if it's 80 to 20,
You still have the option. I
So-
mean, but the practical effect is 80 to 20, most of the time, people are not going to ask for secret ballot. 49 to 50, if I were in the audience, I'd ask for secret ballot.
80 to 20 would be allowed to have a secret ballot.
Oh, any, yeah,
Okay.
any of them are.
7
I mean,
people.
that's in the,
Right.
that's in the state statute. I mean, you have an absolute right to it, so it's,
Okay.
no.
Fascinating.
Other questions? Anything else, Jeff?
No, but I think the point of, Bob and I just going out of our way to make it, to make it clear to people that this is, this is how it works. We're, since we haven't had this at the school for, I don't know, since '99 or something.
Yeah.
There aren't many people that are aware of how it goes, so, I'll be very mindful and try to explain probably more often than I would any other way, this is exactly what's going on, this is what should happen.
John, what we're going to do is we're going to take this portion of the meeting, separate it out, run it as a podcast on our website,
Okay.
and also as a separate, separate program on 21. So with that in mind, is there anything else that you would like to explain to the public that we haven't touched base on for that meeting?
Well, since I now know what I'm here for, what I would do is just explain a little more. Every article must come up and be discussed, okay? And we cannot eliminate an article. So if an article comes up and let's suppose it's, I don't know, the last one here, which was $50,000 for the school buildings maintenance. That, one, we have to discuss it. There's no tabling, and it will be on the ballot. So if somebody were to go and say, if, you look and everybody, we really don't want this, we don't like it, nonetheless, that will be on the ballot. Somebody could zero it out, which is, it's $50,000. Somebody could put zero, but it would still have to be on the ballot. So the first thing is,
That's fascinating, too, because, so the question on the ballot would be, do you vote to expend $0 on maintenance, yes or no?
that is correct. So in effect, what has happened is that the deliberative session has killed the article.
But
That's
that
the
exact question
practical
is on
effect.
the ballot, and it is a yes or no question.
It is a yes or no question. And so one of the things that, can happen, for example, school lunch. The voters can't, at the deliberative session, stop that from getting on the ballot, but they could zero it out or change the number or something. So everything is going to be brought up, everything is going to be on the ballot, okay? We will accept amendments. We're only going to let one person speak at a time. And depending on what it is, I may allow limited questioning of a speaker. For example, if Nate's speaking and somebody has a question, I would allow it. In some of these, there is somebody who is, who's giving a presentation, I will allow some questioning. But there is no tabling. And the other thing is that, if you don't know what's going on, don't be afraid to come and ask the moderator. And the other thing which anybody can do, and which you should do, is at any time, if somebody gets up and says, I have a question on procedure, that takes precedent over anything. So, for example, if, Steve, you were in line and you really didn't what's the previous question or tabling or something, you can say, Mr. Moderator, I have a question on procedure. Procedure tops discussion. So on procedure, I'd go and answer the question, as to what the procedure is. And then the other thing is that, which I always announce, is that the moderator can always be challenged. So if, I say an amendment is out of order, anybody can always challenge me. So, for example, if that Article 9, which has to do with school building maintenance funds, if somebody made an article, I want to put the 50,000, but I want to put it into a ball field, okay? What I would say is that amendment is out of order because it has to have to do with the school building maintenance fund. The audience can go and say, they overrule me, in which case, I'd go and say, okay, so shall 50,000 be spent on a ball field? I would explain, and I'd have counsel explain, the net effect is, you can't do it. And you'll never get the 50,000 for the ball field. What in effect is happening is that you just, you're killing the article. But I would go and explain that.
We had that on the town side several years ago. There was an article to raise in the appropriate $50,000, and it was for a ball field, if I'm not mistaken. And what happened is it was changed to a study of $15,000. DRA ruled that was not an appropriate change of the article and disallowed the $15,000 that the voters voted on.
Yep.
But they didn't get the 50
The-
either.
No, the 50 was off the table immediately, and the 15 was taken off by DRA.
And the other thing which I should mention, because it's come up, is what happens with the bargaining agreements, okay? And they fit into another category altogether. The question is, can you amend the article? The answer is yes. Can you amend the dollar amounts? The answer is yes. The other question is, what's the effect? The effect is, if we say under Article 3 we're going to raise 638,952, somebody changes that number, that has the practical effect of killing the article. Okay, it is because the bargaining agreement, that is not what was presented. So if you change the number, it has the effect of killing it.
Now,
Okay?
is that in effect in law? I mean, suppose I changed the number, and again, I'm gonna give you a case that borders on the absurd. Suppose I change the number by $1. Then it goes to the ballot and it passes. Does that mean the contract cannot be entered into, no matter if both sides say, okay?
No,
we'll
well,
eat the dollar?
we have a different issue. Let's get the two issues.
Yeah.
If we changed it by $1, that's in effect the voters voting no, if you change it. Now, if the LEA and the school board both agree for the $1, then it would be. But you have to have both parties agree.
So if they agree to the dollar change, if both sides agree to the dollar change, then it doesn't have to go back to the voters for another approval.
My understanding, and I talked with the school district council, at Gordon, and Gordon said if it changes, okay, and both parties were to agree to it, that it it could come into effect. But if they don't, it can't.
Ron?
Okay? Which
That's
brings
what,
up-
and that's what your counsel told me.
Nope.
'Cause I
Let
asked
me
that
a-
question.
Let me follow up on that. It's a
Okay.
3-year agreement. What happens to the other 2 years?
Ron, we talked, Nate and I talked to Gordon. The way that works, let's take the first year. We're asking the voters to raise, to vote, to approve the appropriation of $600,000, I can't remember, for the teacher contract. Obviously, if it's approved, we're all set. If there's an amendment to lower it to 500, keep the numbers easy, and that's approved at the ballot, then what you have is an appropriation for this purpose of $500,000. So in order to spend that 500,000, and only that 500,000, you can't transfer money from the operating budget to backfill to get to 600. It can only be 500. So if the board and the teachers group modify the agreement somehow, that doesn't change year 2 and 3, but brings year 1 to 500 or under, then we're all set. You've met the appropriation, you're spending 500 or less year 1, year 2 and 3 are set in stone. They could make a motion to 500 and make years, and take 200,000, I'm making it up, off years 2 and 3. But that has to be part of the amended article, so to speak. If they just say, amend the article from 600 to 500, that assumes everything is being left alone except the first year is going from 6 to 5, or whatever the number is.
So the other 2 years remain in effect?
If nothing is in the amended motion.
Okay. I was just curious about that.
The other thing that would kill it, my understanding is, if any of the language were changed.
Yes.
That it, particularly in a bargaining article, you change any language, it's dead. So, you change it by a buck, it's dead. You change any of the language, because that's set language by statute. My understanding is you change it.
But people have to understand that there's a second step. So for instance, let's just say it's changed by $1, just to use your
Yeah.
example. If in fact it's not in March when it's voted on, if it's no, you have nothing.
Nothing, you got nothing.
Right? If it's yes for that dollar figure, then there's a potential to go back to see if in fact you can get an agreement for that dollar figure, which would then preclude having to go to have a special school district meeting.
Correct.
Right? So what some people who perhaps are new to town may not have to understand, that what we're doing at deliberative session is moving items to the ballot, which gets voted on a second time. So basically, it's the legislative body is saying, all right, this is what we're going to vote on, and then in March, people actually go and vote on that.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and so this time, what, we may do, and we haven't done it for years on the town or the school side, but, when we get up to in Article 3, at least this time, we'll do it sort of as a learning process.
Yes.
Say, this is what can be done on this, and this is what can't be done, and this is sort of what the,
We'll put our training wheels on.
we'll put our training wheels on,
Okay, anything else from anybody? I got one question, and this is sort of asking you for 10 cents worth of free legal advice here.
Yeah.
Suppose a bargaining group, any bargaining group, well, let's use Allied Health for safety's sake, because my wife is a member of the teaching union, so I don't talk about that specifically. But suppose their contract number got changed, they got adjusted down, and they don't like it. Do members of that group now have a right to run off to the court and reopen this whole quorum thing?
Well, the two separate issues, absolutely, completely. Okay?
Yes.
The two separate issues are, one is, can somebody amend something? And the answer is yes.
Right.
But it may or may not have an effect. The second issue is the quorum issue.
Right.
And from the quorum issue point of view, the court has made a ruling, but the issue's come up, a court has made a ruling, appeal periods have ended. That's
Okay.
what they call as res judicata, cannot be brought up again in the,
So somebody can't manufacture a way to be newly aggrieved by the prior court's ruling, decide they think it's improper, and go and try to change that?
no, because
Okay.
there was an appeal period ended, that's it.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, no, that's, now, if somebody were to go and try to do something through the state legislature, different issue. But in Londonderry, it's, it's what it is.
I've been asked to ask one more question. Amendments need only be passed by a simple majority, correct?
Simple majority.
Which is
All the things we're doing
50% plus
here
one
is
vote.
a simple majority.
Okay.
Okay? We don't have any bonding, there's no bonding here,
Okay.
Bonding is a different issue altogether.
Anything else from anybody? All right. Thank you very much. I
welcome.
appreciate you spending all this time with us. It's been a interesting year, and hopefully we'll get some resolution.
And we'll make sure the training wheels are on
Okay, great.
for this one.
Thanks very much.
Okay.
Ron?
John,